Welcome to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this RPG review I'm going to be looking at the Black Hack developed by David Black, and this is a black and white hard copy that I'm reviewing. Now you can get a PDF of the Black Hack for £1.60 English money, which I think's a couple of dollars in American, on DriveThruRPG, and I'll put a link to the address where you can get that from down below. The hard copy is available from Square Hex, that's where I got my copy from. Again, I'll put a link down below, and that's about £4 in British money. I actually ran a game of the Black Hack recently for some friends, set in a roughly Dark Sun style desert world. You can see how that went down by clicking on the link down there. Now, the Black Hack bills itself as a traditional tabletop RPG based on the original D&D, but adjusting the elements to make a more streamlined game in the spirit of the original basic D&D. The core book itself is only about 16 black and white pages long. You won't be getting any fancy artwork, or indeed any artwork of any kind, save for the cover, but that's hardly surprising given the cost. So let's have a look at what you do actually get. The core mechanic of Black Hack sort of flips the standard D20 mechanic, in that in this game you have to roll under your score on a D20 to be successful, and that's your attribute score. The game uses the familiar 6 attributes: strength, dex, con, wisdom, intelligence, charisma, from bog standard D&D, although it makes the game almost entirely player facing. For example, when a hero attacks, they roll to attack, but when a monster attacks, they roll to defend. According to the book, the only time a GM should have to roll is when a monster scores some damage, although to be honest, you don't really even have to do that. It's easy enough to get the player who just failed their defense roll to do it if that's what you prefer. The game has 4 classes in the default game, which are Warrior, Cleric, Conjurer, which is the mage of the setting, and Thief. However, there are equally cheap supplements available in PDF form online that expand this repertoire to include any of your favourites from D&D that you may be missing. The classes themselves are fairly unremarkable. They determine how many hit points you get per level, what damage you do in combat. Oddly, the weapon you use seems to have little bearing on this in the Black Hack, and what special features you have. Special features besides spells seem largely to consist of rolling for advantage on certain rolls. Rolling for advantage will be familiar to fans of 5th edition. In Black Hack, however, when you have the advantage, you roll 2d20 and you pick the lowest result, making you more likely to succeed at an action. Armour in the game reduces damage by its armour point rating. However, once armour points are used, they cannot be used again until the character has had a rest. Presumably this represents the armour degrading and that they fix it up whilst they're resting, etc. I'm not entirely sure how fond I am of this mechanic. It seems a bit unnecessary for me, and for a game that wants to be streamlining things, having to track armour points seems a little counterintuitive. I think personally I'd keep the armour rating but do away with it degrading. It's not difficult at all to tweak. Saving throws are done away with, using instead standard attribute tests, which I think works absolutely fine. Time in the game is split up into moments, which are rounds, and minutes, i.e. turns. I found the renaming a little confusing since the previous naming convention is familiar to a lot of role players, and I don't really see the benefit gained from changing them, to be honest, but again, it's hardly the end of the world. Ranges in the game are kept abstract with 3 range bands: close, nearby and far away. More precise measurements for these bands are provided, but they're not really necessary. Basically, if you can just reach out and touch someone, they're close. If you have to make a normal move to reach them, they're nearby, and if it's beyond that, they're far away. Initiative in combat is nice and easy. The players all make dex rolls. Anyone who succeeds goes before the bad guys. Anyone who fails goes after the bad guys. I found this very quick and easy to use in play when I was running the Black Hack. Monsters deal damage and gain bonuses to their rolls based on their hit dice relative to the player's level. This is a straightforward and streamlined way of dealing with it, and to be honest, you can always tweak it for individual monsters if you like. When it comes to dying and healing, characters reduced to 0 hit points are taken out of action. They roll a d6 on a table containing results from 1, you just knocked out, to 6, dead. Assuming a character survives this roll, they regain 1d4 hit points. Results of a 4 or a 5 on this table result in permanent disfigurements. At lower levels especially, I can see this system being fairly deadly, or PCs accumulating so many penalties that they're effectively retired. Whether you like this or not is down to your playing style. It's a bit hyper deadly for me, but it wouldn't be too difficult to bring in something like death saves from D&D. When characters level up, they gain hit points, and they also roll a d20 for each stat. If they roll higher than their stat, then it goes up by 1. Certain classes normally get to roll this twice for their class's main stat, giving them a better chance of improving in appropriate attribute. One of my favourite mechanics in the game is usage dice. Essentially, finite supplies like rations, arrows and lamp oil have a usage dice associated with them. Each time you use that item, you roll the usage dice. If you get a 1, the dice is downgraded to the next lowest dice type. For example, preserved rations have a usage dice of d8. When I eat some rations, I roll a d8. If I get a 1, then the dice is downgraded to a d6. If I rolled a 1 again, then it'd be downgraded to a d4. And if I rolled a 1 again, I'd have used all my rations, because you can't go lower than a d4 in this system. I like this mechanic because it's a very nice way of representing finite resources without having to do all the normal bean counting associated with it, although I doubt everyone's going to be as fond of it as I am. The Divine and Arcane spells are something of a mixed bag, to be honest. They include everything you'd expect in a basic D&D style game, but a lot of them don't really seem to be balanced at all, especially given that many of them don't allow any sort of save. There is a smattering of generic monsters in a table at the back of the book, providing their name, hit dice and any special abilities. These are fairly serviceable, but again, some of them seem fairly unbalanced. One example of this is the Deadly Centipede. If you're hit by the Deadly Centipede, you basically get a contest, and if you fail, you roll on the out of action table. So feasibly, you could take 1 hit point of damage, fail your con check, roll a 6 on the out of action table, and that's it. You're dead. You just drop dead. Overall, Black Hack is a very basic set of rules, which is hardly surprising. It doesn't advertise itself as anything else. If you're looking for the sort of game where every circumstance has a rule associated with it, then I'd advise you to keep moving along. If you're running Black Hack, you'll find yourself having to use GM Fiat a lot to keep the game moving. Personally, I don't mind this so much, but it won't be to everyone's taste. However, it does remind me very much of the days of basic D&D, when the rules were pretty bare bones and you did have to come up with a lot of stuff yourself. And that seems to be the sort of old school flavour that Black Hack is trying to convey. So, if you're looking for a basic D&D style game that's extremely cheap and no frills, and you're not afraid to put in a little extra work or intuit things during a game, then you may find that Black Hack scratches that old school itch for you. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this RPG review, and then if you liked it, you'll click on the red dice there to subscribe to my channel. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them down below, or hit me up in the Google Plus links as always. Until I see you next time, take care and happy gaming.